Yeah. Okay. I do really appreciate my Scott expressing his concern over my riding being neglected in this diagram under rural urban, and to me it actually looks more urban, small urban than it actually looks rural urban. Myself having one of the largest rural ridings in Southern Ontario and having a very strong rural presence with small, I mean, my largest town is 8,000 people. And I had 3 electoral reform town halls, very well attended, I might add, and they all actually were very much in favor of electoral reform, as am I. I'll be perfectly upfront. But the biggest concern that all of them expressed was this rural mix, right? How do we get it right so that we end up maintaining rural representation? It's already, every time we redraw the maps, our ridings get larger and larger and larger. My riding is barely sustainable now, driving 4 hours from one corner to the other corner of the riding, and I have 19 municipalities, 1 Mohawk territory, 2 county levels of government, and all of the myriad economic development, business, community, and social entities attached to those that I'm trying to represent on the Hill and lobby on behalf of, compared to an urban center like Toronto that has 30 MPs with 1 municipality, 1 chamber of commerce, 1 housing authority, right? And so the deep concern that they have and that I have is, what are we going to do in the rural ridings? Under your map here, once again, it looks like the rural areas are going to get crunched. Are going to get hammered. As I said, you don't even have anything where my riding is, and most of where you do have your circles are just happen to be right near a small urban center, not a large urban center like in Ottawa, but Kingston, Peterborough, Cobourg, Trenton, Belleville. These are all larger centers in Eastern Ontario that all have representation. But myself, I guess Scott's riding is going to expand substantially, as is maybe Halliburton. I don't know, right? I don't know how you cover this massive hole you've got in the middle that's actually the largest riding in the whole bunch of them. So I guess I would throw it out there once again. How do you address?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Yes. That is, in fact, the whole purpose of the rural-urban model. And we haven't called it rural/small urban model, because that just gets too complicated.
No, it's actually
That's
small
right.
urban.
So small urban is included in the rural umbrella that we're talking about. And the idea is to create a model that has enough flexibility that where there is felt to be a strong need to retain more or less the boundaries of a riding as exists currently, that would be possible, and it would still be possible to have proportional representation. And the way we do that, and if you like, we could meet you and I anytime. I can come on to the Hill. Like I said, I'm 10 minutes away on my bike, so I can come by and we can chat about it and look at it very closely. In this example that's in this map that we were looking at earlier, you've got 9 existing rural ridings, rural and small urban ridings, that become 8. Okay, so there is some expansion, but that's really modest compared to what you would have to have under MMP, where you'd be expanding the size of ridings by 60 or 70%. So it makes a huge difference. And it's a huge difference relative to STV, where the only way that you can have multi-member ridings is to group 2 ridings together. So you actually have to double the size of ridings.
Excuse me, the problem we already have, I mean, I'm the chair of the National Rural Caucus, and one of the biggest issues, the reason I created the Rural Caucus was so that we could offset this lobbying capability that you see in the large urban centers. Any further increase in rural ridings is completely unacceptable, right? People, like I said, we're already stretched to the max. You can't stretch it any further than that. And that's in Southern Ontario. What are you going to do in the north? Right? So where right now, many of them have to commute by plane just to travel around their ridings. Right? So I mean, this is something that to me really is at the root of the biggest issue you have to deal with. And like I said, I support electoral reform because I think that, yes, every vote should count, and we need to find a solution that's going to work. But if it's going to be at the expense of rural, Not a chance, because we're already getting hammered as it is. We're already at a total
at the expense of
disadvantage.
rural. It's not at the expense. The distribution of seats rural and urban stays the same. You don't have an electoral reform and try to rebalance power at that stage.
But this really goes to the crux of the situation. Because right now we have the Small Communities Fund that is defined, how they define a small community is 100,000 people or less, which is what you've done here as well, right, in your written report. And this is the conundrum, right? Is how does a community of 1,000 people compete for funding against a community of 100,000 people? And now what you're doing is you're actually creating an even more unequal representation by increasing the size of these ridings. Even a 15% increase in the size of these ridings, you don't understand. I don't know. Or have any of you have you grown up in a rural community and had to compete for those funds, or been representative on a rural municipal council and had to compete for those funds against the larger centres? It's very difficult. And even though Eastern Ontario, there's lots of rural areas within it, they're controlled by urban centres like Kingston, Peterborough, Belleville.
There is one solution, Mike, which is that you, instead of reconfiguring the ridings, you add a small top-up of 10 to 15% new seats. Then you can leave the rural ridings exactly the way they are. If you think that's politically viable, that's one way to move ahead with proportional representation. You can't have proportional representation without having some formula for multi-member ridings or top-ups.
That is your separate.
So if you want to have multi-member ridings and top-ups, and you also want to keep single-member ridings exactly the way they are in rural areas, the only way to do it is to add a certain number of MPs. And that's what we're trying to suggest with the rural-urban model. If you want to go that way, that is an option, if it's political.
Okay, our time's up, but it's been a very vigorous debate, and that's what keeps us coming back day after day. So